online.
What's happening around the world and what's happening here at home? Very good evening to and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sandro Ferdinando.
And I am Ruhaza Irfan. Before we move on with our bulletin, let's take a look at your headlines for this evening.
Some of the beneficiaries excluded from the Oswasuma program continue their protests. State Minister says Oswasuma beneficiaries should not fall prey to numerous political groups and must file appeals soon. Activist Piyatni Keshela arrested over the torching of the President's private residence, granted bail.
මම පැහැදිලිවම කියනවා අපිට කිසිදු උමනාවක් තිබ්බ නැහැ එතුමාගේ නිවස ගිනි තබා විනාශ කිරීමට.
Foreign Minister engaged in talks with the Exim Bank of China. 9 people arrested for beating a man to death in Hanguranketa. Undefeated in the ICC qualifiers, Sri Lanka make it to Super 6 stage.
Well bowled and
President Ranil Wickremesinghe assured that the restructuring of domestic debt will have no impact on the membership balance of any public funds, including the Employees' Provident Fund. He emphasized that the rate of return for superannuation funds will not be affected in any way.
The President made these statements while inaugurating the Gampha District Secretariat Administrative Complex. The President mentioned that the deposits of more than 50 million bank depositors will remain unaffected and there will be no changes to the current interest rates paid on bank deposits. President Ranil Wickremesinghe also announced that proposals for restructuring both foreign and domestic debt will be presented to the Cabinet tomorrow. At the same time, the Speaker issued an extraordinary gazette at the request of the Prime Minister summoning Parliament to meet on Saturday, the 1st of July.
මේ වර්ෂයේ අවසන් විට समस्त विदेश ණය प्रमाणය
The total external debt of the country by the end of the year would be $41,000 million. Due to the fluctuation of the rupee, the domestic debt of the country is $42,000 million. Domestic debt is greater than external debt. We need to source dollars to service the debt and also need to source rupees. Money has become an issue due to these factors. The only path we can undertake is to restructure the debt. If we can go ahead without restructuring the debt, by 2035, our debt burden will be at 100% over our GDP. The only option we have is to secure support to restructure the debt. Are we to pay the debt as it is or to get it reduced with assistance? Those are the two questions that we have to answer to reach a decision. We need to select one option. We cannot resort to old politics. External creditors have given their consent to assist us. They told us to reduce the external and domestic debt burden. There is no point in only restructuring domestic debt as we cannot source foreign funds in the absence of local funds. We need to have local funds in hand to source the foreign funds. We are seeking relief to the tune of $17,000 million in the next 5 years from our external creditors. We are looking for a reduction of $17,000 million from $41,000 million. We are also looking for relief from the domestic creditors. If not, we cannot go ahead with the program. What are we to do with $17,000 million if we do not have the rupees? So, we will restructure both external and domestic debt. The proposal is being prepared and I discussed this with the President. It will be presented to the Cabinet on Wednesday and we will inform the ruling faction and all the party leaders. I want to proceed by bringing all the parties together. This will be given to the Committee on Public Finance on Friday. I have informed it to the Chairman as well and it will be passed during the weekend. During this period, banks are on holiday. Some are looking at making a quick buck by making various assumptions. We will return to normalcy on Tuesday without any issue. The restructuring of domestic debt will not pose any threat to the stability of the country's banking system, whether it be public or private banks. If there will be an impact, I will announce it. Earlier I said that taxes need to be raised and other measures need to be taken. Some will simply yell and move on. Such incidents will not happen here. There will be no changes to the current interest rates paid on bank deposits. When we reduce inflation, the rates can drop. That is something separate. The restructuring of domestic debt will have no impact on the membership balance of any public funds, including the Employees Provident Fund. The rate of return for superannuation funds will not be affected in any way. The proposed debt restructuring plan has been designed with the primary objective of safeguarding the public's bank deposits as well as protecting the depositors of all banks regulated by the central bank. If funds are required from the banks, I will inform them. But there is no such requirement. Banks can open, funds can be sent from overseas, and the other transactions can take place. All this can take place during this period, and all these matters will be informed in due course. Some want to go to court against this. I do not understand why. Why are they trying to stop us from rising up the bankruptcy? The old political ways of yelling and going to court will not suit. Only Parliament has the power in this matter. The judiciary is separate. The judiciary also does not like these conflicts. The power lies with the Parliament in this matter as per the Constitution. We will pass it accordingly and implement the program.
අධිකරණ බලයක් තියෙන පාර්ලිමේන්තු බලයක් තියෙන පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට. ඒ නිසා ඒ නීති අනුව අපි සම්මත කරලා ක්‍රියා කරනවා.
Some of the beneficiaries who were not included in the new Oswasuma welfare benefit payment scheme were seen handing over their appeals on Tuesday. Several protests were also reported against the selection process for this new program.
A heated situation arose in the Bandaragama Divisional Secretariat when the Samurdhi beneficiaries were informed to fill their forms outside the Divisional Secretariat. A protest was staged by the Samurdhi beneficiaries who were excluded from the Oswasuma program opposite the Kalutara Milla near Divisional Secretariat on Tuesday. A similar protest was staged opposite the Panadura Divisional Secretariat on Tuesday afternoon. A person held a protest on top of a tree in front of the Valigama Valipita Divisional Secretariat, alleging that he was excluded from the Oswasuma program without even being taken into consideration. The police then tried to remove the person from the tree, but their attempts failed. However, the person came down the tree upon a request made by one of his close friends.
We don't get anything from the Divisional Secretariat. No government officer who works here care about us. We are helpless. We are starving. The only help we got from the government was this Samurdhi benefit. Now they have cut it off as well.
A large crowd who came to hand over their Oswasuma appeals were seen at the Mathura Divisional Secretariat. A protest was staged in the Ampara Valathapite village demanding the Oswasuma welfare benefit.
Many who are present here are daily wage earners. More than 90% of our village have been excluded from the Samurdhi welfare benefit. Why are you burdening the poor who don't have much?
Appeals were accepted at the Bibila Divisional Secretariat on Tuesday. This was a protest that was staged opposite the Udayarakattu Samurdhi Bank in Pudukudiri, Pumulathiv. A similar protest took place near the Chenkaladi Divisional Secretariat. The New People's Front lodged a complaint with the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka on Tuesday and stated that the selection process for the Oswasuma social welfare benefit was unjust. The group launched a silent protest after filing the complaint.
මාසයකට විදුලි ඒකක පරිභෝජනය
This has a guideline to cut the Samurdhi benefit if the monthly electricity consumption is over 60 units. 65% of the people in this country are diabetic patients. A large number of them use insulin and it should be stored in the refrigerator. If the refrigerator is used, it takes over 60 units of electricity. Should they suffer because they are poor? The Samurdhi bank system is a massive fund. We have suspicions over whether they are trying to use this to sell this bank network to a microfinancer.
කවුරු හරි මයික්‍රෝ ෆයිනෑන්ස් මුදලාලි කෙනෙක්ට විකුණන්නද මේ කරන්න හදන්නේ?
SLPP MP Jagat Kumar reiterated that the Oswasuma Social Welfare Benefit Scheme should be suspended to serve justice to the people.
The Welfare Benefits Board guidelines for the Oswasuma Social Welfare Benefit is to cut stamps if they have proper sanitary facilities, drinking water, a tap line, if the roof is strong, if they have a brick wall house or if the child is going to school. This must be fixed. I propose to the government and the President to temporarily suspend the Oswasuma Social Welfare Benefit Scheme and provide relief to the people. They can't rob the people of their right to live based on what the World Bank or the IMF says. We won't agree to it in Parliament.
Speaking during a media briefing at the President's Media Centre, State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe advised the people to refrain from falling prey to the political influence of various groups and to file appeals before the 10th of July.
There is a political force behind this. If there was a change in the selection process, the Welfare Benefits Board has taken steps to fix it. The President issued directives to assign dedicated officers at divisional secretariats to take necessary measures. People shouldn't fall prey to the needs of political forces and attempts by certain groups for their continuity. If you have not filed appeals or raised objections, take measures to do so. The government is bound to serve justice for you. We received 188,794 appeals and 3,304 objections so far.
විරෝධතා 3304යි මේව මොහොත වන විට අපිට ලැබිලා තියෙනවා.
The All Island United Samurdhi Development Officers Society said the appeal process is not an easy process for the people who are facing the issue.
This is the appeal paper. How can illiterate people fill this? It says to submit this online. They don't even have a phone. Everyone in Parliament unanimously passed the Oswasuma Social Welfare Benefit Scheme. But now, these bankrupt politicians are instigating the people. The chairman of the Welfare Benefits Board, Vijay Ratna, who compiled this, has now introduced the 1924 hotline. Let's see if it is reachable. We cannot call that number. Don't deceive the people. While people are focusing on that, they are trying to rob the banks to clear local debt over the next few days, discussing the Anti-Terrorism Act and trying to introduce an act to suppress media. We suspect these will happen when people are distracted.
අඩු කරලා මේවා සියල්ලම සිද්ධ වෙයි කියලා අපිට සැකයකුත් තියෙනවා.
Former Minister S.B. Disanayake said development officers and agriculture research assistant officers stepping away from the Oswasuma survey process led to the issue.
The
Oswasuma scheme was introduced as an alternative to the Samurdhi benefit. When selecting beneficiaries, development officers and agriculture research assistant officers did not want to accept it due to an issue with the government. It would be better if we resolved the issue at the time with the officials who were appointed independently for the Oswasuma by the Welfare Benefit Board. Some of them were the youth of the village. The others were in youth councils with no experience. They have made a serious mistake. The President and ministers must accept that.
බරපතල වරදක් සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා කියන එක තමයි මම කියන්නේ මේ තේරීමේදී.
The All Island Progressive Samurdhi Development Officers Society responded to this.
We were prepared to assist the survey. The 21st and 22nd clauses of the Welfare Act stated that if information provided by a beneficiary is false, the development officer will be punished. We repeatedly told the government we are willing to conduct the survey if those conditions were withdrawn. Those requests fell on deaf ears. The government brought youth from villages to carry out the problem. As a result, the government is facing a tough situation. Those who lost the benefit have come to divisional secretariats. Now the government is trying to combine the National Savings Bank and the Samurdhi banks. The entire banking process will be regulated by the central bank. As a result, funds and reserves amounting to 600 billion that are secure under the Samurdhi scheme will be absorbed by the government. On the other hand, Samurdhi officers' jobs will be at risk. The government is prepared to give compensation to Samurdhi officers, urge them to retire and deploy them for other work.
ඒ වගේම වෙනත් ආත්‍ර අනුයුක්ත කිරීමේ කුමන්ත්‍රණකාරී වැඩපිළිවෙලට ආණ්ඩුව සූදානමින් පවතිනවා.
These were the views expressed by the former MP Nalinda Jayatissa.
Sri Lanka was an agriculture-based country and we managed our 3 meals. However, Gotabaya Rajapaksa made a spontaneous decision to ban fertilizer and impose a curse on the country. Today, along with our children, we are suffering from this curse. We do not have proper nutritious meals. These are the results of the Gotabaya Rajapaksa curse. His successor Ranil Wickremesinghe brought along a similar curse. Many Samurdhi beneficiaries have been deprived of the social security provided to them.
Sri Lankan Foreign Minister Ali Sabri PC said that though Sri Lanka made moderate gains in recent months, there is a long way to go for economic recovery. He was speaking to CNBC on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum.
So basically the bilateral relationship that we have had over a period of time, there are a number of issues for us to discuss, particularly revolving around investment and the economies, and also some regional and global issues. So we have had a very good discussion with them, and particularly how China can help us, our next phase of propel growth, and also to face some of the challenges in terms of debt restructuring and debt burden which we have been undergoing for a considerable period of time.
How are those conversations going? Because we know that they've been going on for quite some time. We've just had this deal out of Zambia. They're going to be restructuring debt there, something that China is heavily involved in. How are you watching those developments and how are your conversations going?
Our conversation went off pretty well. I met the Foreign Minister, Finance Minister, as well as the Chairman of the Exim Bank. The Chairman of the Exim Bank is the counterpoint here in China for us to discuss the debt restructuring. All those discussions were very, very fruitful and very cordial, and they have given us the undertaking that they will continue to support the Sri Lanka's next phase of development. And in the meantime, as you very correctly pointed out, what has happened in Zambia, it gives us a lot of optimism and a lot of hope, and I think it's time that we need to have a global debt restructuring architecture which would help smaller countries, emerging economies and frontier countries so that they could quickly get out of the trouble and get into the next space without get embroiled in controversy forever. Yeah, last year had been a very difficult year for us, but since then things have really improved a lot. We have eliminated all sorts of shortages in terms of fuel, cooking gas and the food and the medicine, things like that, and we have no power cut at all, 24 hours uninterrupted power, and then inflation is under control. Probably we will get it down to about less than a single figure probably in a couple of months. Tourists are coming back, money is coming back through the proper channels, and rupee had appreciated. So things are looking better compared to what it used to be, but long way to go. We have made, as the Premier said, moderate gains during the last 10 months, a long way to go.
And you've got some quite serious restructuring talks happening this week.
Yes.
Can you talk us through what will be happening there?
Yeah, it's very important that basically we obtain the EFF from the IMF. With that comes a lot of conditions also. IMF has provided us a debt sustainability analysis. So we need to work towards that in terms of reduce the overall debt and also the external debt. So we are in the process of talking to several parties in order to restructure the debt. There are several parties, bilaterals, multilaterals, of course the bondholders like the private and the commercial creditors and the local creditors.
China Harbour Engineering Corporation has said it would invest $1.2 billion in the Colombo port city. The announcement came following a meeting between Sri Lankan Foreign Minister Ali Sabri and President of CHEC Bai Yingzan in Beijing on Tuesday. The Sri Lankan embassy in China said that the CHEC would commence its investments with the International Financial Centre. At the same time, the Exim Bank of China has assured support for Sri Lanka's economic recovery and growth. Sri Lankan Foreign Minister Ali Sabri called on the chairman of the Exim Bank of China and discussed the ongoing debt restructuring process. Minister Ali Sabri also met with the chairman of Sinopec, Ma Yong-shen, in Tianjin, where the latter had expressed its confidence in its investments in and partnership with Sri Lanka. 12 members of parliament from the Sri Lanka-China Parliamentary Friendship Association are in China. The MPs from both government and opposition met with Wang Ke, Vice Chairman of China's National People's Congress China-Sri Lanka Friendship Group, Guo Yezo, Vice Minister of the International Department, Central Committee of CPC, and Sun Weidong, the Vice Foreign Minister of China. They are also expected to meet with mayors of municipal governments. The Sri Lankan MPs will also have field studies on railways, ports, electric vehicles, information and communications technology.
A press conference was called by the Ceylon Bank Employees Unions, stating that the government should announce the domestic restructuring plan immediately.
The domestic restructuring process is not a recommendation of the International Monetary Fund. A new word for restructuring will be optimization, which the government is now trying to go into. What happens here is that the government will take loans from the people and agencies and say that they had taken such loans for government sovereign bonds and treasury bills. Now, if these treasury bills and bonds are being restructured, there are only three ways. The first is the option of changing the face value. The government and the central bank can extend the maturity period. The CBSL pays a certain interest in this regard. There is a chance that a part of this interest can be slashed. These are the three methods that can be used during debt restructuring. There has been no official comment with regards to the method that is to be followed. Please tell the general public what the government is attempting to do.
The main opposition party, Samagi Jana Balawegaya, also made remarks in this regard.
I have been in parliament for 30 to 35 years. However, in whatever the circumstance, I have not seen in my experience parliament being convened on a Sunday. What is the speciality in this regard? What is the government trying to hide? They are attempting to trick the government and the parliament. Until he announced so in France, nobody knew that parliament would convene this Sunday. This is a lockdown. The question is, why is this done under a lockdown? Why the urgency? They say the IMF has not told us to restructure domestic debt. They have not even made such a request. Why does the government want to incite such urgency? If a parliament that does not have the franchise of the people wants to get their way, they must lock down the country. Just like what happened when J.R. Jayawardena signed the Indo-Lanka agreement. The entire country was under a curfew when he did so.
The Freedom People's Congress also made comments in this regard.
The debt restructuring is done by the executive. Because they want the port tour to be involved as well, the executive is putting this out to parliament as well. The port tour will be told to follow and they will do so. The total debt of the country is $83.6 billion. Central government debt is estimated at $76.9 billion. From the loans that the government has taken, 53% is foreign debt. However, 42% is local debt. This has now turned into a Pandora's box where we do not know what would happen when this comes out. The government that used to address the nation on a daily basis has now taken a vow of silence. Activist Piat Nikeshala, who was arrested in connection with the investigations into torching the president's private residence on May 9th last year, was released on bail after he was presented to the Fort Magistrate Thilina Kamage.
Civil activist Piat Nikeshala was arrested by the CID when he was summoned to provide a statement. Piat Nikeshala was released on a cash bail of 25,000 rupees and 2 sureties.
Piat did not say a single word about arson, violence or assault. Therefore today our legal team made a very clear statement to the court. This arson and the protest are two different things. The people were summoned here because the protesters were attacked. That is why the learned magistrate accepted the fact.
Sri Lanka police arrested 8 people on Tuesday for beating to death a 22-year-old man from Hanguranketha. Police also said that a group behaved in an unruly manner last night opposite the Hanguranketha police, citing that the police failed to arrest the suspects.
How did they attack the victim?
Police stated that the victim was initially injured following a brawl that broke out over a land dispute and later succumbed to his injuries while he was receiving treatment at the National Hospital in Kandy on Sunday.
They were carrying poles. They attacked me and my nephew as well. My son was in the ICU for 8 days and he had died today. I want justice for the murder of my son.
Final rites of the victim will take place tomorrow at the Hanguranketha Public Cemetery. Earlier, one woman was arrested over the crime and was later remanded after being produced before magistrate. Police stated 8 other suspects were arrested on Tuesday over the crime. Police also stated that a former SLPP Pradeshia Sabha member is also among the arrested suspects.
What happened opposite the Hanguranketha police station last night?
Police said that a group behaved in an unruly manner last night opposite the Hanguranketha police, citing that the police failed to arrest the suspects. Police then fired into the air to disperse the group of protesters who tried to forcefully enter the Hanguranketha police station.
There are moments in life that change you. Those moments fill the heart and touch the soul. These are the moments we live for. These are the moments we dream of. Dreams of love. Dreams of peace. And these are the dreams that come true. Thank you for dreaming with us. Let's move up.
News first with the people.
Sri Lanka's Navy's first ever women parajumpers successfully completed their basic parachute course.
For the first time in the history of the Sri Lankan Navy, the first group of women parajumpers consisting 2 lady officers and 3 women sailors successfully completed their basic parachute course at the Sri Lanka Air Force Parachute Training School, Ampara, on the 21st of June. Going by an idea mooted by the commander of the Navy, Vice Admiral Priyantha Perera, this particular group of women grabbed the opportunity to follow the first ever basic parachute course, marking a historic milestone for gender equality and women's prowess in the Sri Lanka Navy. On successful completion of theoretical classroom sessions and ground training, they mastered essential skills such as aircraft exit procedures from AN-32 of the Sri Lanka Air Force, from 800 to 1000 high in the sky to the premises of the Sri Lanka Air Force Parachute Training School in Ampara. The 5 successful jumps they made also included a night parachute jump and a tactical equipment jump.
Global animal rights organizations have lauded Sri Lankan government's decision to scrap its plan to export monkeys to China.
People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals said it is grateful to Sri Lanka's government for nixing a plan to export 100,000 monkeys to China and for recognizing that they aren't commodities to be bought and sold. Dr. Lisa Jones-Engel, the PETA's senior science advisor, said, quote, "These monkeys do not belong in captivity. It is almost certain that once in China, they would be funneled into biomedical experiments and dead within months," unquote. As Sri Lankan animal groups, including the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society of Sri Lanka and primate experts, showed the These macaques are individuals with families who live in tight-knit communities. PETA had written to the Sri Lankan government urging them to cancel the sale of the monkeys, who would likely have ended up in laboratories where they would have been tormented and killed. 30 petitioners, including the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society of Sri Lanka, have filed action in the Court of Appeal against the statement made by Minister Mahinda Amravira regarding the exporting of toke macaque monkeys from Sri Lanka to China. The case was taken up on Monday, where the Attorney General stated that the Department of Wildlife and Conservation had issued instructions mentioning that they would not be taking steps to export monkeys to China. The case will be taken up again in the Court of Appeal on the 6th of July 2023.
The first Team Europe Biathlon to promote biodiversity-based tourism in Sri Lanka was organized by the delegation of the European Union to Sri Lanka on the 24th of June.
The event featured a multitude of activities including kayaking, ocean cleanup and more. Participants engaged in kite surfing and had swum 300 meters in the Kalpitiya Lagoon as well.
We're celebrating the diversity and exploring the biodiversity of Sri Lanka through sport. So the event includes 5 sporting activities, which includes kayaking, running, cycling, kite surfing and swimming, but in a non-competitive, community-driven way so that we can enjoy the surroundings. Sri Lanka is also one of the biggest biodiversity hotspots in Asia. This event is organized to tell the world that we have so much valuable resources in Sri Lanka that we need to protect as well.
The ambassador of the delegation of the European Union to Sri Lanka also spoke on the occasion.
Thank you to local communities. People from far away come and try to work with you, and we want to learn from you. And I think it has been a two-way exchange, and the only way that we can try to accompany the climate transition, which means to adapt, is to work together. We are learning from you, you are learning from us, and that's the principle of the European Union.
A 10-kilometer bike ride and a 3.6-kilometer run took the participants to view smart agriculture as they engaged in casual discussions with community livelihood and biodiversity recovery project partners on protecting the bar reef and on coastal conservation as well.
Scotland sustained their first defeat of the World Cup qualifiers as Sri Lanka won by 82 runs in Bulawayo.
Scotland captain Richie Berrington opted to field first, having won the toss, and was rewarded early on as his side made inroads. Chris Soul took the wickets of Divut Karnaratne for 7 and Kusal Mendis for 1, but Sri Lanka led by Nisanka rebuilt. The Sri Lankan opener would have been targeting 100 but was dismissed short of that milestone, caught by Thomas McIntosh off the bowling of Mark Watt. Matthew Cross caught Charit Asalanka for 63 off Watt's bowling, and Greaves took 3 quick wickets as Dhananjay De Silva was bowled for 23 and Dasun Shanaka and Vanindu Hasaranga were caught by Soul. In the Scottish innings, Brendan McCullum, who scored an imperious 136 against Oman on Sunday, was bowled for just 5 by Mahesh Theekshana after Cross fell cheaply to Lahiru Kumara. From there, Scotland collapsed, slipping to 100 for 8, with Chris McBride the only member of the top order to show any resistance. Theekshana took 3 for 41 and Vanindu Hasaranga 2 for 42 as Sri Lanka's spinners caused havoc on a slow turning pitch. Greaves counter-attacked with a 41-ball 56 not out, and the 9th wicket partnership of 55 between Greaves and Soul took Scotland past 150, but Soul and Alistair Evans were run out in quick succession to leave Scotland well beaten and were all out for 163 in reply.
In the end, 245.
Also in cricket, Paul Stirling's outstanding 162 helped Ireland beat the United Arab Emirates by 138 runs in the final World Cup qualifier Group B game in Bulawayo. Stirling smashed 15 fours and 8 sixes on his way to his mammoth total, with Abru Balbin with 66 and Harry Tector with 57 helping Ireland 349 for 4. Sterling's second wicket partnership with Balbani yielded 184 runs. Wasim Muhammad's 45 gave UAE hope, but wickets fell regularly thereafter as they were all out for 211.
The mammoth 159-run opening partnership between Chamari Athapattu and Vishmi Gunaratne guided Sri Lanka to a comprehensive 9-wicket win over New Zealand women in the first ODI encounter in Galle. The game was reduced to 28 over sides. Batting first, New Zealand women posted 170 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in their 28 overs. Amila K top scored with 40 runs while Maddie Green chipped in with 38. Chasing 172 runs to win as per the DLC method, Sri Lanka women reached the target with 6 balls to spare. Chamari Athapattu smashed an unbeaten 108 runs, while Vishmi Gunaratne contributed with 50 runs.
And with that, wrap up primetime news for tonight.
And for more of these stories, visit our website newsfirst.lk. Good night and take care.